When a father makes a choice in private, where do its consequences stop? At the door. At the end of the evening, at the moment when the evidence disappears, listen carefully. A decision may be hidden when it is made, but when that decision becomes a pattern, the pattern enters the household. It shapes reactions, expectations, trust, silence, and memory. What begins inside one man can eventually become the climate surrounding everyone near him. This is not condemnation. Condemnation asks only, whom can we prosecute? Responsibility asks, what is this producing? We are not gathering evidence against imperfect men, because no father enters this assignment without weakness. We are examining consequence. A repeated choice teaches, even when no lesson was intended. It teaches what love permits, what power sounds like, whether promises can be trusted, and whether wounds should be repaired or concealed. Private conduct does not remain private when other people must live with its effects. Some hear this from the pain of absence. Others hear it through confusion because a father was present but difficult to understand. Some fear failing their children. Some carry regret over damage already done. Others still wrestle with resentment toward the man who should have given what he did not possess. No single history describes every family, but every history raises the same urgent question. Must the past continue governing the future? No. Consequence is real, but consequence is not destiny. A pattern can be interrupted when it is named, examined, and replaced. So we must ask a better question. What does a family require from a father beyond income, authority, or physical proximity? Money can meet an expense without forming a person. Authority can command behavior without creating security. A body can occupy a room while attention, courage, and care remain unavailable. The title alone cannot stabilize a family. Fatherhood must be measured by the functions a man accepts. We will define 10 of those functions, 10 responsibilities that can be examined, practiced, repaired, and passed forward. Not a standard of perfection, but a framework of accountability. Not vague blame, but visible conduct. Before we decide whether a father has succeeded, we must first establish what fatherhood is for. What standard can fairly measure a role whose consequences reach farther than what a man earns, says, or allows others to see? What, then, is fatherhood for? Begin with a definition. A title is what someone is called. A function is what someone consistently contributes. The title may announce a relationship, but the function reveals whether that relationship is being responsibly served. This means fatherhood is not merely a position a man occupies. It is a coordinated assignment he performs through character, service, judgment, influence, and purposeful conduct. A role becomes accountable only when its functions are defined. The purpose of that assignment is stability. Stability does not mean a household never experiences conflict, loss, uncertainty, or change. It means there is dependable order that helps the family face pressure without surrendering identity, care, boundaries, or direction. Notice the difference. Stability is not the absence of pressure. It is the presence of reliable support under pressure. Think of a building held upright by several essential supports. One beam may be strong, but it was never designed to carry the whole structure indefinitely. Income is important, but money cannot permanently compensate for missing guidance, unavailable attention, inconsistent discipline, or broken trust. A man may pay every bill and still leave crucial needs unsupported. One visible contribution cannot replace a coordinated assignment. And responsibility does not mean superiority. To carry an obligation is not to possess greater human worth. It is to accept a particular duty of service. Nor does this framework declare that a family without an active father is without hope. When a father is absent, weak, or still learning, mentors, relatives, and communities can reinforce these functions. Support can come through many faithful hands, but the possibility of reinforcement does not erase the responsibility attached to fatherhood. It proves how necessary the functions are. Write these 10 in order: identity, provision, protection, instruction, presence, discipline, example, affirmation, vision, and legacy. They belong together. Identity answers belonging. Provision directs resources toward need. Protection establishes safety. Instruction transfers wisdom. Presence makes care reachable. Discipline creates responsible order. Example gives conduct credibility. Affirmation names developing value. Vision gives direction. Legacy carries what is worthy into the future. For every function, we will apply the same test. What does it mean? What does it look like in conduct? And what repair begins when it is weak? As you listen, notice where you have reduced the whole assignment to earning, commanding, or simply being there. The audit begins without accusation, but it must begin honestly. And the first question is foundational. Before a family can know where it is going, what must it know about who it is? A family must first be able to answer, who are we? That answer is identity. Identity is a stable understanding of belonging, dignity, responsibility, and the values a household intends to embody. But listen carefully. Giving identity is not manufacturing personality. A father is not assigned to produce smaller versions of himself. He does not own another person's gifts, temperament, questions, or future. His responsibility is to establish roots strong enough for individuality to grow without fear. Healthy identity says two things at once. You belong here, and your life carries responsibility. Belonging without responsibility can become entitlement. Responsibility without belonging can become bondage. The two must remain together. A child should know, I am loved before I perform, and because I am loved, I am expected to live with dignity, honesty, courage, and care. Identity does not confiscate freedom. It gives freedom a secure place from which to develop. How is that communicated? Through names spoken with respect. Through family stories that explain what has been endured, learned, repaired, and valued. Through principles that remain consistent when circumstances change. Through expectations that call a person upward without humiliating the person who is still growing. Ordinary language becomes powerful here. You are part of us. We tell the truth. We repair what we damage. We do not abandon one another. Your gifts do not have to resemble mine to be worthy of development. Now examine the failure of identity. Comparison tells one child that another child is the standard. Labeling turns a mistake into a permanent name. Rejection makes difference feel dangerous. Favoritism divides belonging into ranks. And when achievement becomes the price of affection, the household may produce performance while quietly multiplying insecurity. A father must never make love appear and disappear according to grades, talent, obedience, or public success. Correction may address conduct, but it must not revoke belonging. Here is the repair test. Can every family member explain what this household stands for without fearing that love will vanish when performance falters? If not, begin with language. Identify one label that must be retired. Replace it with one truthful statement of belonging and responsibility. Say it consistently. Prove it through conduct. Identity provides roots without clipping wings. And once people know they belong, the next question becomes practical. What resources must be directed toward their life, growth, and genuine needs? If people are valued, their needs must be taken seriously. This is the work of provision. Financial contribution belongs within that work, and it must be honored. Food, shelter, clothing, education, transportation, and care require material support. A father should not dismiss the responsibility to earn when he is able. But income is part of provision. It is not its complete definition. Write this down. Provision is the responsible anticipation of genuine needs and the wise organization of available resources to meet them. Those resources include money, but they also include time, attention, access, practical skill, useful relationships, knowledge, and opportunity. A provider does more than bring resources into the household. He notices what is required, establishes priorities, and directs what is available toward life and growth. This is stewardship. Stewardship asks not merely, how much do I have, but what am I doing with what I have? More income without order can still produce neglect. Limited income with honesty, planning, cooperation, and personal involvement can still produce meaningful support. The amount matters, but management reveals responsibility. Do not confuse paying for the household with participating in its well-being. Proof of payment can confirm that an expense was covered. It cannot confirm that a relationship was served. Money may purchase lessons while no one encourages the learner. It may provide a home while no one organizes time to hear what is happening inside it. It may open a door while no one helps a growing person walk through that door wisely. Now confront both distortions. The financially successful father must not use money to purchase an excuse for absence. And the father with limited income must not accept the lie that he has nothing valuable to give. Shame will not increase his capacity. Responsible action will. He can plan, listen, teach, repair, seek help, share skills, create order, and cooperate without surrendering dignity. Here is the stewardship test. What does your family repeatedly lack because resources are unmanaged, priorities are unclear, or pride prevents cooperation? Name one material need and one non-material need currently neglected. Then identify what can be redirected this week. Money, an hour, a conversation, a skill, or a request for assistance. Provision is not measured only by what passes through your hands, but by whether what is available is faithfully directed toward genuine need. But what good is supplying growth if the household remains exposed to what can threaten, waste, or consume it? Resources can serve a family only when the conditions for life and growth are defended. This is protection. Protection is not merely the dramatic moment when a father confronts an obvious danger. It is the ordinary discipline of noticing risk, establishing wise limits, and responding early enough that preventable danger does not become a crisis. Write this definition down. Protection is strength disciplined by responsibility for another person's safety and dignity. It pays attention to physical conditions. It questions harmful access. It examines financial exposure before one reckless decision burdens the household. It recognizes relationships that manipulate, degrade, or repeatedly invite destruction. And it takes responsibility for the emotional atmosphere created within the home. A family needs safety around the body, resources, relationships, mind, and heart. But protection must never be confused with possession. Protection uses strength against what threatens people. Possession uses strength against the very people it claims to defend. One establishes boundaries so dignity can develop. The other imposes control so authority cannot be questioned. A protector does not demand access to every thought, dictate every preference, or punish healthy independence. Boundaries must serve people, not convert people into property. Now confront the contradiction. What sense does it make to restrict danger outside the home while releasing fear inside it? A father may inspect every external influence and still expose his family to his own volatility, contempt, intimidation, or uncontrolled anger. He may call himself vigilant while everyone else studies his mood before speaking. That is not safety. When the household must manage the protector's unpredictability, his strength has abandoned its assignment. Self-government, therefore, is part of protection. The man who wants to guard his family must also guard his reactions. He must know when to pause, when to listen, when to seek help, and when to repair what his conduct has damaged. Strength governed by care creates confidence. Strength governed by insecurity creates submission without trust. Here is the conduct test. Do your family members experience boundaries as clear, consistent care, or do they experience you as the condition they cannot predict? Identify one unsafe pattern or one unclear boundary that requires calm correction. Name it without excuse. Establish the needed limit. Explain whom it serves and why. Then practice it consistently. A protector makes safety more predictable. He does not become the danger everyone must manage. Yet boundaries cannot accompany a person everywhere. So how will protected people learn to recognize danger and exercise sound judgment when the protector is not present? Protection prepares a safe place. Instruction prepares a capable person. The purpose is not to keep someone dependent on the father's judgment, but to develop judgment that can operate responsibly when he is absent. Write this definition down. Information tells a person what. Instruction explains why, demonstrates how, permits practice, and provides feedback. Information may produce awareness. Explanation produces understanding. Demonstration makes the principle visible. Practice develops capacity. Feedback corrects the action before the error becomes a habit. That is how knowledge becomes usable. A father instructs whenever he patiently teaches people how to handle commitments, resolve conflict, manage resources, make decisions, admit mistakes, and treat others with dignity. These lessons are not transferred by speeches alone. They are formed through ordinary moments, showing how to consider consequences, allowing a growing person to attempt the task, examining the result, and explaining what should be repeated or changed. Consider a manual handed to someone who has never seen the equipment used. The rules may be accurate, but accuracy alone does not create competence. In the same way, unexplained commands may produce compliance while authority is standing nearby, yet fail to produce sound judgment once supervision disappears. If the person knows only your answer, he may remain dependent. If he understands the principle, he can evaluate a new situation. Now confront the impatience. A father cannot demand knowledge he never patiently taught. He cannot conceal the lesson inside his experience, punish questions as disrespect, and then become angry when others fail to understand him. Questions are not always rebellion. Sometimes they are the doorway through which understanding enters. Instruction requires enough humility to explain what experience has made obvious to you but has not yet become obvious to them. Here is the teaching test. What essential lesson exists only inside your head? Choose one skill or value your family is expected to know but has never been deliberately taught. Explain why it matters. Demonstrate how it works. Create a safe opportunity to practice it. Then give feedback that corrects without humiliation and encourages another attempt. A father's experience becomes an inheritance only when it is translated into understanding another person can use. Instruction prepares people for responsible independence. But patient teaching requires more than knowledge. It requires accessible attention. And that raises the next question. Can your family reliably reach you when understanding cannot wait? If instruction requires accessible attention, then presence cannot mean merely occupying the same address. A father may sit within a few feet of his family and remain emotionally unreachable. His body is in the house, but his attention is somewhere else. Occupancy records location. Presence establishes connection. Write this definition down. Presence is the consistent practice of noticing, listening, and responding so that family members know how and when they can reach you. Noticing means you observe changes instead of waiting for a crisis to announce them. Listening means another person can finish a thought without competing against your impatience. Responding means you do not repeatedly receive important concerns and leave them unanswered. These three behaviors turn attention into reliability. Now, every father does not control every circumstance. Work may demand long hours. Distance, separation, illness, or limited access may shape what is possible. Responsibility does not deny constraint. But constraint must not become a permanent excuse for silence. If you cannot always be physically near, establish a dependable way to be reached. A brief call kept consistently can carry more relational weight than a generous promise repeatedly postponed. Do not confuse dramatic occasions with dependable presence. A special trip may create a beautiful memory, but families are stabilized by smaller moments they can trust. A regular conversation, an attentive greeting, a question followed by patient listening, a promised return to an unfinished concern. Spectacle attracts attention for a day. Reliability builds confidence over time. Now confront distracted proximity. What receives your quickest response? Your device, your work, people outside the household. If family members must compete for attention that strangers receive immediately, physical nearness will not feel like access. This does not mean every interruption must control you. It means the people you love should not have to manufacture an emergency before you become available. Here is the accessibility test. When something important happens, does your family know when and how you will listen? Choose one repeatable time or clear signal that promises undistracted access. Explain it, protect it, keep it often enough that trust can form around it. If you miss it, acknowledge the miss and reschedule promptly. Presence is not measured only by where your body is, but by whether you can be reliably reached. And once a father is available to hear, he must also learn how to respond when what he hears requires correction. Correction begins where presence is tested. A father has listened, now he must address what is wrong. But the first person he must govern is himself. If his anger controls his voice, his pride controls the penalty, or his frustration changes the rules, he is not administering discipline. He is displaying a lack of it. Write this definition down. Discipline is the process of teaching a standard, making consequences understandable, applying them consistently, and restoring relationship after correction. Every part matters. The standard explains what is expected. The consequence explains what follows a violation. Consistency prevents personal mood from becoming the real law. Restoration makes clear that correction addressed the conduct, it did not cancel belonging. Consequence is not retaliation. Retaliation asks, how can I make you feel what I felt? Consequence asks, what response will make responsibility clearer? Firmness is not an emotional explosion. Firmness can remain calm because it does not need fear to prove authority. You can be serious without being cruel, decisive without humiliating, and disappointed without becoming destructive. Think of lane markers. They guide movement because they are visible before the driver crosses them. A boundary announced only after someone violates it is confusion presented as leadership. If the rule changes with your mood, if threats are made in anger and forgotten later, or if correction becomes a public performance of another person's shame, the household learns unpredictability instead of responsibility. Now, confront the exemption. Do you punish disrespect while speaking disrespectfully? Demand honesty while hiding your own mistakes? Require self-control while everyone must endure your temper? Correction loses moral authority when the corrector refuses to correct himself. A father does not weaken leadership by admitting, my response was wrong. He strengthens the standard by submitting to it. Here is the conduct test. Can you correct a wrong without committing a new wrong in the process? Before the next conflict, choose one rule or consequence that has been unclear, inconsistent, or driven by anger. Revise it. State the standard calmly. Explain the reason and the consequence in advance. Apply it without humiliation. Then return to the relationship, discuss what must change, and acknowledge any wrong in your own response. Discipline should leave responsibility clearer, not fear deeper. And this raises the next question. What happens when a father's daily conduct teaches the opposite of the standard his mouth declares? The answer is already forming in the question. Conduct always speaks. Example is instruction delivered through repeated behavior, whether the father intends to teach or not. His family learns not only from what he explains, but from what he consistently demonstrates. Advice may announce the standard, but habits reveal the standard actually governing his life. Write this relationship down. Stated values gain weight when repeated conduct confirms them, and they lose weight when repeated conduct contradicts them. A father cannot cancel the lesson of his conduct by raising the volume of his advice. If he praises truth but conceals his mistakes, secrecy becomes the lesson. If he demands respect but degrades people with less power, domination becomes the lesson. If he teaches restraint but surrenders his voice to anger, rage becomes the lesson. His mouth may describe one principle while his life trains the household in another. So, examine the ordinary tests. When you make a mistake, do you tell the truth before exposure forces you? How do you treat someone who cannot reward you or challenge your authority? What happens to your language when frustration rises? Do your commitments remain important after the moment of promise has passed? Can you apologize without adding an excuse that transfers responsibility to the wounded person? These are not minor details. They are daily instruction. Now return to the private choice. It becomes visible when repetition shapes the atmosphere and expectations of the home. One concealed action may seem isolated, but a practiced habit teaches everyone what to anticipate, excuse, imitate, or fear. What is hidden in the moment eventually becomes recognizable through its effects. But example does not mean flawless performance. Perfectionism produces pretending. Integrity produces congruence. Congruence means your conduct increasingly agrees with your convictions, and when it does not, you admit the contradiction and repair the damage. Saying, I was wrong. I violated the value I taught. I will make this right, is not the collapse of example. It is an example of truthfulness, humility, and responsibility under failure. Here is a generational test. What behavior in your life would you fear seeing reproduced in those who follow you? Name one habit. Do not rename it, defend it, or hide it behind intention. Interrupt it. Seek help if necessary. Apologize where it has caused harm, and establish a replacement others can safely imitate. Conduct teaches silently, yet families also need values spoken deliberately. The next function is affirmation, truthful words that recognize what is worthy and strengthen what is still growing. What conduct demonstrates, affirmation names aloud. But affirmation is not flattery. Flattery exaggerates in order to produce a reaction, gain favor, or manage behavior. Affirmation tells the truth about dignity, effort, character, and development. It does not manufacture worth. It pays enough attention to recognize worth and speak accurately about what is emerging. A father's voice becomes incomplete when it is heard only in correction. If he speaks when the room is untidy, the promise is broken, the grade declines, or the attitude is wrong, but remains silent when patience is practiced, courage appears, or responsibility improves, the family learns that failure is visible and growth is invisible. Correction may identify what must change, but affirmation identifies what should continue. Be specific. Do not stop with "good job." Say, "I saw you tell the truth when dishonesty would have protected you." Say, "You remained patient under pressure." Say, "You accepted responsibility without blaming someone else." Say, "Your effort has become more disciplined." Specific recognition teaches a person what strength looks like in conduct. It gives language to progress that may still feel small. And listen carefully. Affirmation is not reserved for children. A spouse can be strengthened by honest recognition. A grown son or daughter still needs to know that maturity has been noticed. A mentee, relative, or family member carrying an unseen burden can be steadied by words that say, "I see the integrity with which you are handling this." Adulthood does not eliminate the human need to be truthfully known. But approval must never become an instrument of control. Do not offer affection only when someone achieves what pleases you. Do not praise obedience merely because it protects your comfort. When approval is withheld to force performance, encouragement becomes manipulation. Love must not be the prize for becoming useful, impressive, or similar to the Father. Here is the speech test. If your corrective words were weighed against your strengthening words, what picture of each person would emerge? Would they appear as a whole person developing responsibility, or as a collection of failures awaiting your inspection? Choose one person today. Name one specific quality, effort, or improvement you have genuinely observed. Communicate it without attaching a demand, warning, comparison, or correction. Let the truth stand. And once growth has been recognized, it must be directed. What future can this household prepare for, and what choices must begin now to move toward it? Recognition identifies what is developing. Vision asks where that development should lead. Write this definition down. Vision is a clear picture of a preferred, responsible future that organizes choices in the present. It does not merely describe what a family hopes to possess. It clarifies what the household intends to become, what it will contribute, and what must begin now. Vision is not fantasy. Fantasy enjoys the destination without accepting the journey. Vision establishes priorities. Vision accepts sacrifice. Vision respects sequence. Vision produces action. If every desire is treated as equally urgent, direction disappears. A responsible future requires some opportunities to be pursued, some comforts to be delayed, and some distractions to be refused. But listen carefully. Family vision is not a father's private ambition imposed upon everyone else. Leadership does not erase agency. A father may announce a future that displays his preferences while ignoring the gifts, convictions, needs, and developing judgment of the people he serves. That is not shared direction. It is dictatorship dressed in hopeful language. Invite understanding. Ask what each person sees. Explain why a priority matters. Make room for contribution. The father's responsibility is not to make every decision alone, but to help the household move with increasing clarity and responsible participation, and broaden the picture. Vision is not limited to achievement, property, education, or public success. What kind of people will this family become? How will it treat those who are vulnerable, difficult, or unable to offer an advantage? Will truth be practiced when concealment is convenient? Will repair follow injury? Will generosity survive limitation? Household culture is also a future being built. A destination may inspire movement, but a useful map must show the next turn. So apply the alignment test. Does the calendar support what the family claims to value? Does spending reflect genuine priorities? Do conversations prepare people for the future, or merely react to the present? Do repeated habits move the household toward its stated direction? Name one shared future priority. Then identify one observable decision that supports it now. Schedule the conversation, redirect the resource, begin the practice, seek the needed counsel, or remove the recurring distraction. Vision becomes leadership only when tomorrow's picture governs today's choices. Then raise the horizon. What will continue when the father can no longer provide direct leadership or physical presence? Direction must eventually become transmission. Vision reaches beyond the years in which a father can personally guide the household. This is legacy. Write this definition down. Legacy is the influence that continues operating after direct supervision, authority, or presence has ended. It is not merely what remains in someone's possession. It is what remains active in someone's judgment, conduct, relationships, and choices. Material inheritance matters. Resources can create opportunity, relieve burdens, and support future responsibility. But assets without formation may be consumed without wisdom. A fuller inheritance includes practice values, usable skills, family stories, relational habits, and models of accountable repair. What did this family learn to do when conflict appeared? How did it respond to failure? What principles remained when convenience invited compromise? These patterns may travel farther than property. Now return to the opening question. Where do the consequences of private choices stop? Repeated conduct can move through a household and into another generation. Anger can be learned. Silence can be learned. Deception can be normalized. But listen carefully. Interruption can also be learned. Truth can travel forward. Apology can travel forward. A family can inherit the courage to examine damage and respond differently. This is why the sentence, "This is how my father was," must never become permission. It may explain where a pattern began. It does not authorize where that pattern goes next. Explanation gives context. Responsibility determines continuation. You may not have chosen what was modeled before you, but once you recognize its operation in you, you become responsible for what you do with it. Here is the repair sequence. First, name the inherited pattern accurately. Second, accept responsibility for its present continuation without transferring blame backward. Third, seek appropriate forgiveness, counsel, treatment, or practical help. Fourth, establish a replacement practice and repeat it until a different response becomes credible. Repair does not erase history. It changes what history is permitted to reproduce. Now take the legacy test. If the next generation repeats what this household currently practices, what will be strengthened and what must be interrupted? Choose one pattern worthy of deliberate transfer and one pattern that must end with you. Legacy is not only what a father leaves to people. It is what he leaves operating within them. A stabilizing legacy preserves what gives life, interrupts what causes damage, and teaches those who follow how to repair what remains unfinished. The 10 functions are now complete. The question is no longer what fatherhood requires. The question is what you will begin practicing now. Then gather the assignment into one clear decision. Identity establishes belonging. Provision directs available resources toward genuine needs. Protection makes safety predictable. Instruction develops usable judgment. Presence becomes reliably reachable. Discipline begins with self-government. Example brings conduct into agreement with conviction. Affirmation names what is growing. Vision organizes today around a responsible tomorrow. Legacy transfers what should continue and interrupts what must end. 10 functions. 1. Coordinated responsibility. Write them down. Now mark 3 places. Mark 1 function already becoming a strength. Acknowledge it and continue it. Mark 1 responsibility you have neglected. Name it without disguise. Mark 1 area where your conduct has caused damage. Do not merely improve your intention, begin repair. 2 escape routes must close today. The first says, "I failed before, so change is impossible." That is despair pretending to be honesty. The second says, "I meant well, so change is unnecessary." That is intention pretending to be responsibility. Failure does not remove your duty to grow, and good motives do not repair harmful results. Responsibility requires truth, teachability, and action. Choose one practice now. Begin the repair conversation. Establish a dependable time of access. Clarify the boundary. Teach the skill you assumed others should know. Interrupt the habit you would not want repeated. Fathers, future fathers, mentors, and family members do not possess identical authority, but each can practice the responsibility genuinely available to them. Do not promise 10 changes and begin none. Select one observable action. Name when it will happen and invite accountability. Now say this personally. I accept responsibility for what my conduct produces. I will remain teachable. I will govern myself before attempting to govern others. I will acknowledge harm without excuse, seek help when needed, and repair what I can. I will strengthen what gives life, interrupt what causes damage, and practice what I hope another generation will inherit. I do not need perfection to begin. I need honesty, courage, and the next responsible action. Different patterns can begin with me, and they begin now.